little play with some texture in watercolour today. I have got 4 colours mixed up. You could use any yellow, blue, rosy colour and green. The ones that I've got are permanent rose, cobalt blue, quinacridone gold and perylene green. So each of these have had half a teaspoon of water and a pea-sized blob of paint, and they're very consistent. That's important when you're going in with a wet wash. I've drawn out a little scene here, semi-abstract, with some cow parsley. I'm going to do brambles and little bits. It's all about the texture today. The blue is masking fluid, so that's just preserving the white of the paper. To apply that, I've used a colour shaper, and that's like a rubber silicone tipped tool, and that's just very easy to clean off. So I've let that dry and we're going to come straight in with a wash. I'll talk to you about the other things that I'm going to use when I'm building this texture. So it's a nice fun one today. So lots of water is going to go on. I've got round number 10. I'm going to come in with the yellow to start with. It's always good to start with your lightest colour first. These are all transparent watercolours, so they won't fight against one another, which is quite important. I want them to sit really quite still on the page. We're going to get that yellow in. Give that brush a bit of a rinse off, dab it off, check it's clean. I'm going to come in with a bit of the blue. Cobalt blue is a great sky colour. It's one of my favourites. I'm just going to get a bit of blue in the background. Doesn't matter if it goes into the green, it's all going to start to blend anyway. Brush a little bit of a rinse. Going to dab into the rose. So I like a little bit of warmth in my pictures. So this I'm going to pop in. It's all going to be mixing on the paper. I might even pop a bit within the sky. Just wisp that through. Brush rinsed off again and then into the green. So this is nice and dark. And I'm just doing upward strokes as if I've started to create these bits of brambles and foliage at the bottom. There's lots of different ways to create texture, and this is just some of those ways, so I can go through lots of different videos on how to create this texture. Okay, so what I've got now is some acrylic ink. I'm just going to drop a little bit on. Now this is sepia. It's one of my favourites. It's nice and dark. It doesn't take away the colour. It's not too black. It's a nice dark brown. And acrylic ink is opaque. I've pipetted that straight on, and it does these wonderful things that it just spreads out and pushes against that transparent colour. Just give this one a little bit of a shake. This one is a pearlescent one. It's called Autumn Gold, and I'm just going to pop a little bit of that in as well. I like the mixture of ink and watercolour. It gives an added depth, and it's really good for granulating and giving you a little bit more texture as well. I'm just going to pop a little bit more of this darker ink just down in the corners. It always works to get some darker in the corners. An odd bit exploding out is great. That's what you want to happen. I'm going to get my brush, my round number 10, and I'm just going to make sure, this is breaking all the rules, I'm taking water on. So I'm just dabbing into water and making sure that this is spreading enough. Because the ink is fairly thick, sometimes it doesn't spread as much as I'd like it to, so I'll play with it a little bit. So I'm just manipulating the ink with a bit of clean water just to help it to spread. This is all building up bits of texture. Okay, so these are the tools that I'm going to use to build some texture today. I have got some gauze and some wool or yarn, depending on where you're from. I am wetting the wool and I'm going to wring it out a little bit, just gently. I want them to be enough water there that it's going to do something on the paint. And then these strands are about 15 centimetres, and I'm just going to place them on. No particular way of doing it. I want lots of different texture, so I'm just going to place them on and dab them on. You get a bit messy doing this. And then these bits of gauze or cheesecloth, I've used multiple times. I just end up ripping them and pulling them a little bit, and then I'm going to add those on. Need to hit somewhere where there's not much wool so it actually hits the surface. These are dry. There are lots of different ways again you can use these. I'm going to pop some on dry. I'm going to pop some in the paint. So this is one that I've used in the paint before. So I'm going to pop it into cobalt blue. With all of these processes, there's always an element of trial and error and randomness, and that's what I like about them. Sometimes they turn out, sometimes they don't. The beauty is just trying it. So I'm dipping this into the rose. I'm going to pop that on there. Okay, just going to push that down a little bit. You're just wanting it to just dry on the surface and create some texture. I'm just going to dab a little bit of ink just on my palette here. With the acrylic inks, you've got to make sure that you do rinse your brushes off well and your palettes off well, because it will dry on there. It's not like watercolour in that way. I'm just going to dab a little bit of that ink through on this dry gauze. We'll just see what happens. I always say to my students, it's only a piece of paper. And then we're just going to leave this to dry for about 20 minutes. That's nicely dry now, so I'm just going to start peeling this off and see what texture we've got. Can be a bit hit and miss, but we should have some. I've got some nice little bits here, look. Nice and random. The string's still a little bit damp. I'm just peeling all this off really carefully. Some really nice texture. There we go. And I'm going to dry this really well. That's nicely dry now. The masking fluid's still on, and it's just a case of looking at what you've got and where you might want to add more. I'm going to show you like the simplest form of doing a little bit of negative painting as well. So if I come into this darker area, I'm just with a pencil, I'm just going to pop in a couple of leaves. So it just gives me a guide to work to. Negative painting is quite hard to establish in your head when you're new at doing this. But this is, I'm going to bring this up and it's going to come to this texture there, and I'm going to pop in a big leaf here, and giving myself an outline when you're new to doing this helps you to know where you're going. So I've just popped on a couple there. I'm going to put one more down here. The trick now is to not eliminate all of this nice texture that we've created. So we're going to come on with a second layer. So I've got my nice soft wash brush. I'm going to come back over with water, starting from the top. I'm going to cover all of it apart from those leaves that I've drawn. Those leaves are going to appear to be coming out from me painting the background. Although I'm wetting all of this, it doesn't necessarily mean I'm going to paint on all of it. I want to keep some of it just as it is, but wetting it everywhere apart from those leaves just means that I'm not going to get a watermark. Okay, I've got my round number 10 and I'm going to come in with the quinachrome gold again. So this is building up this colour. A double layer always gives you a really nice sense of light as well. Keep it to the bottom. And I'm coming round those leaves. If I come into the green, you'll see as I come round those leaves that they start to show. And they've got that colour underneath, so that can then become the colour and tone of the leaf. It's a great way of how layering works, and layering with texture. So just, you're always mindful that you don't want to take away everything you've popped in here. You're adding to it. You're not going to eliminate everything that's there. So I'm going to take a few little bits higher. Remember, where you lift off, the brush will explode colour, so you've just got to be a bit careful about that. Then I'm going to bring in a little bit of dark from this side. So this is still the green. At any of these points you can even add more things in to create more texture. We're just doing one layer today. Give that a bit of a rinse off. I'm going to pick up a number 6 now. Come back into the blue. So I'm just building up this a little bit more. You can neaten up any of these edges around the leaves that you've got. You can see how they've appeared, and that is just the simplest form of negative painting. You're painting the background to bring out something in the foreground, which is those leaves. Do some little sweeps. So it's really nice and textural, this. I've not eliminated all of the lovely texture. I've still got this lighter area. I've got a bit of light showing through here that it works really nicely. I'm just going to come into a little bit more of the green. So there's little bits of dark coming through will make the light look lighter. So I'm adding a little bit more of that dark. I've dropped a little bit of water here when it was drying, when I was doing the woolen yarn, and that's made a really nice watermark, and that's going to work really well. So I'm just leaving that. And then I've got a little bit of the rose. Just nice to get an extra bit of balance. I'm just dabbing in really with that area there. So I'm going to add a little bit in there as well. A little bit more of the quinacridone gold in there as well. So I'm just thinking about these areas with the masking fluid now. I want them to show really nicely when I rub out. So I'm just going to make sure I've got enough of that green. Just popping through those ones. Okay, so I'm going to dry that off. Okay, so that's nicely dry now. And we're sort of at the stage of finalising the last little bits of hard brambles and leaves. And at this point, less is more. What tends to happen is you think, oh, I've got all this lovely texture, and you go over the top with all of these brambly bits. So I'm starting in this top corner. This is a green that I'm just stroking through just to create a little bit of extra definition in this corner. So it's just gonna be brambly and just an odd leaf. So if I stick in a couple of leaf shapes, so this is a green that I've gone on with, and then I'm just gonna dab in with a little bit of the quinacridone gold into each of these leaves. If the shape's not great, sometimes your shapes aren't great, you can just with a damp brush just bring it a bit bigger. That's a better shaped leaf there. Things always work better in threes, so we're going to stick another one in just there. That's with the quinacridone gold, and then I'm just going to add a little bit of the green on there. I'm going to bring through a few more brambly bits. If you hold the brush quite far down, this is my round number 6, and sort of twist as you go, dipping into the paint, you get a really nice natural line. I'm going to come behind those. You see, already it's getting busier, and I've just got to be really careful I don't go too busy. You need this extra bit for the depth, but you don't need it a lot. I'm going to pop in just an odd leaf shape. Then just dab in a little bit of the gold colour. I'm going to take a little bit of the gold through. Just so it's not all one colour. Just weave some little lines through. I'm going to get my line writer, which is my long thin brush. We'll start with the gold, and we're going to do the same. We're going to keep it nice and fine, and twisting through. Notice I've not come any higher, I've kept it within this bit, so we're keeping the texture in this lower section. And then coming into the darker green. The more layers that you sort of build up doing this sort of process, the more light you achieve. That lovely yellow coming through is working really nicely. Just going to bring something here to this texture, so it looks like it's a bit of a flower. And I'm just gonna, with a damp brush, just soften that in. So really now I'm just making sure there's nothing that's floating. And then we're going to rub the masking fluid off in a minute. Just dipping into different colours. I can dip into the blue a little bit. A bit of variety. So just grassy brambly bits. If you've got a little cotton bud, you just take up some paint on there. You can dab in a little bit more texture. So I'm using a bit of the dark green, just add in a few random dabs. I'm not going to do too many. Then I'm just going to wet the other end, and I'm going to pick up some of the rose and just do a few random dabs with the rose. I'm keeping all these colours similar, and that's just going to work really well together. It's going to give a really nice synergy. You've got all this texture happening. Okay, I'm going to dry that off and rub the masking fluid off. So that's dry, and I've rubbed the masking fluid off, just gently rubbing like that, and that's all taken all of that off now. So it's now just really to final touches. So I'm going to use a number 6 and then some of this quinachrome gold and just come along. I don't want any of this really to be too white, so this is just the gold taking the edge off the white. I was quite purposeful with the masking fluid and made it quite broken up, just because I didn't want to have too many sharp lines. So I'm just coming over all of these little brambly bits with a little bit of the quinachrome gold to start with, just to knock them back. If you've got any bits that look a bit blobby, then you come in with a little bit of the green. So just dab into your green, and that'll just fade them in basically. So if I dab a little bit of the green in there, so that one's a bit blobby, and a little bit along that line there, just to fade that in a little bit. That one just there as well, so I'm just bring a little bit in there. Back into the gold. I'm going to take a tiny dab of that blue into the gold. So I've got the cobalt blue mix, and I'm going to bring that along these stems. Now I don't want you to worry if your stems are a bit blobby. Masking fluid is notoriously hard to apply, and I'm going to show you how to just neaten those up. I'm just bringing that green in, and then just load your brush with water. You're going to take a tiny amount of that same colour, just dabbed through. You're leaving some of it white and just shading some of it green, and it's just a watered down version. And that's going to work really nicely. I'm just going to get my line writer and come into the darker green now. So I'm going to make a few stems coming through. It's a little bit disjointed, I need some stems, so I'm just coming off the main stem. I'm doing like little branches up into the white flowers. You can just do a few of those. And then with my green, so this is a dark green, I'm going to come in and just neaten up some of these edges. As you can see, I'm just running that edge along the edge. Some of them are a bit thicker than they should be. It'll help to define these edges as well. And if you rinse your brush, load it with water, and you're just going to touch in between and just soften that in. So just in between those stems, and then it won't look like you've outlined. It's giving it a nice depth as well. Rinse my brush again, just soften those bits in. So it's just a nice easy technique to soften in. Right, I'm just going to dry that off, and it's just very final touches. So that's nicely dry now, and I've got just a gold pen, a gold gel pen, and I'm just going to bring through a few extra bits of brambly things. So just random lines, and it's just again giving it an extra bit of texture. It'll be really obvious on the dark areas, but not so obvious on the others. Bring it through a little bit at the back, the top. So I'm just making brambly marks really. Just giving it an extra dimension. There we go, that's all finished. I've taken the tape off so you can see this properly. So that's a lot of different textures, the use of the acrylic inks, which I'll list in the description so you've got an idea of what I've used, the yarn texture, the cheesecloth or gauze texture, and then the applying of layers of paint on there. Hope you've enjoyed it. See you next time.